What is Pokemon known for nowadays? For your animated cartoons? Your movies? Maybe their trading cards? Or maybe their other countless merchandise like plushies, t-shirts, accessories, and many more. Pokemon is the highest ever grossing media franchise valued at $98.9 billion, which has a bigger total franchise revenue than Disney's most profitable franchise, and is worth more than McDonald's, Marvel's, and Star Wars all combined. Heck, if you combine two entire countries like Iceland or Luxembourg, its total revenue barely makes it past Pokemon's total revenue. Like, this franchise is so massive. Okay, quick history lesson. Pokemon began as a video game releasing Pokemon Red and Green in Japan back in 1996 and was released for the Nintendo's Game Boy. It was a game where they could catch, train, and battle fictional creatures. Later, an enhanced version called Pokemon Blue was released in Japan, featuring updated graphics and dialogue. When Pokemon debuted internationally, Pokemon Red and Blue were the versions released outside Japan, bringing the franchise to a global audience. These games laid the foundation for what would become the highest-grossing media franchise in history. Seeing that the Pokemon video games started it all, you would think that the mainline games would be the crown jewel of the franchise, right? Like, it would be the main thing where they put most love, money, and effort into, but nah. Somehow, despite being the foundation of this billion-dollar empire, the games feels like it's the last thing they care about. Let me explain. Modern Pokemon games aren't just worse, it's straight up lazy and it hurts more because we know they could do better. So today, we'll be talking about how did one of the biggest franchises on earth went from making video games that shaped many childhoods to making games to accidentally sleep on while playing it. When the new Pokemon Legends ZA announced an upcoming, many fans were rather disappointed for many reasons. Notable ones are the fact that the game would be set entirely within Lumio City. Let me tell you why that sucks. One of Pokemon's enduring charm has always been a thrill of journeying through diverse environments, lush forest, expansive field, mysterious caves, and bustling towns. By confining the entire game to Lumio City, players lose that sense of discovery. While a tighter focus on Lumio City might allow developers to refine urban aesthetics and gameplay mechanics with more detail, it often comes off as a shortcut rather than a creative approach. Fans always expect a fresh, expansive take on the Pokemon world following the success of open-world entries like Pokemon Legends Arceus. Instead, this approach can feel like a step back, a cash-saving measure that limits dynamic exploration some people crave. Do you think this is a good idea? And it's not only because of the map. Numerous fans pointed out that the game suffers from recycled animations and underwhelming graphics. Even with the resources available to such a massive franchise, the presentation can feel outdated. The reuse of assets and animation frameworks signals to many fans that not enough effort has been made to polish the game and push technical boundaries, especially when compared to competing titles from both indie developers and AAA studios. And I know, Game Freak is a small team and expecting too much can be delusional, but it was by choice. So by keeping the team relatively small, Game Freak can maintain a focused, efficient structure and to preserve a pure, focused creative vision without the burden of excessive bureaucracy. It sounds cool and all, but with this, they'll keep facing resource constraints, and with Pokemon games being as big as it is, shit happens when you mix a small team with tight deadlines and corporate pressure to pump out a game every other year or so. You get video games that noticeably feels rushed, having no time to polish it, and plus their small team trying to create everything and with a tight deadline, it would be too much. But hey, we still haven't gotten the game yet, so who knows? Maybe it'll exceed our expectations, and maybe the game doesn't only revolve around Lumio City. Maybe it's just our April Fool's prank, right? An out-of-season April Fool's joke. Now, let's look at the recent releases like Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. The fans' reaction was mixed. While some players were intrigued by the series' attempt to evolve the traditional formula by experimenting with elements like open world structure and fresh gameplay mechanics, the majority of the discourse centered on a series of issues that left many longtime fans disappointed. Many players reported that the games were riddled with bugs, glitches, and performance issues that were simply unacceptable, especially when coming from a franchise behind one of the biggest grossing media empires ever. Critics and players pointed out that the visuals and animation felt recycled and undercooked, making the games seem like they were built on outdated technology even when compared to other titles on the Nintendo Switch. Also, some fans just doesn't like the game concept itself. Some saying,
The Academy in Scarlet and Violet feels like a forced, never-ending school day. There's no adventure, just a tedious cycle of classes that drains all the thrill of exploring a vibrant world.
And many also didn't like the story, with them saying,
I was really excited for a fresh Pokémon adventure, but the story in Scarlet and Violet is a complete retread. The generic high school drama and recycled plot twists make it feel like every other game in the series. It's utterly uninspired.
Also, this one user said,
It's being anchored down by piss-poor and generally inexcusable performance on the technical side. Low frame rate, horrendous pop-in, visual glitches, movement becoming a slideshow at much too close a distance, immense lag. General consensus is that the game itself could easily be counted among the best of the Pokémon games, but that the technical issues are too glaring to look past. Now, here comes the reason for the hate. The Pokémon Company is filthy rich. This is Game Freak's fourth game on the Switch, their second attempt at this formula. And there was ample time to come forward and delay this game, but they didn't. And they released this game in such a poor technical state, when there are plenty of more complex and more demanding games out there on the Switch that run far better and far smoother.
And it's safe to assume that Pokémon Scarlet and Violet aren't at all well received and liked by the fanbase. And also, same thing with some of the previous releases such as Pokémon Sword and Shield, which most are calling the worst Pokémon game ever made. Many people criticize it for being too bland and reusing most of previous mainline games, animation, models, and many more assets, making the game feel like it was lazy and not having much effort put into it. Also, one of the newer mainline Pokémon game, Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, a remake of the original Pokémon Diamond and Pearl released on a Nintendo DS, was also widely criticized for having such minimal effort put into it, comparing to other remakes like Heart Gold, Soul Silver, or Pokémon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, which added so much more content. Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl just feels odd when some of the recent features like the overworld Pokémons not being implemented is such a massive step down when the previous titles already had it. Anyways, not all modern Pokémon games are terrible. Pokémon Legends Arceus is actually pretty decent, and some of these games does have its own moments. And maybe you have your own opinion about it. You might like it, you might not. It's just that for a $60 game, Pokémon feels like the worst alternative when you can buy better JRPG games like the Dragon Quest series, Final Fantasy, Persona. Heck, there's so many games that has better graphics, better mechanics, and much more effort put into it. The only thing that sets apart Pokémon is that it's a cultural phenomenon. A movement that transcends gaming and embeds itself into a fabric of childhood nostalgia, competitive ambition, and simple joy of exploration. While other similar JRPG franchises offer richer narratives, deeper character development, and complex mechanics, Pokémon thrives in something more primal, the desire to collect, grow, and to connect. Other JRPG might dazzle with grand cinematic stories, but Pokémon taps into something simpler yet profound. The dream of venturing into the unknown, making discoveries, and forming bonds with creatures that evolve as we do. It's measured by memories it leaves behind, the friendship it inspires, and the unshakable feeling that no matter how old you get, there's always an adventure waiting just beyond the tall grass. It's just a shame that it couldn't be fully accomplished. I have way more things to say about it, but how about we just leave it at that? Even though modern Pokemon games have so many things terrible about it, there's still some good things about it too. But yeah, it's terrible. Also, it's been 3 decades. Where's the voice acting?